We used to be a team no one respected. We used to be a team no one feared. That was then. This is now.
First victory of the year on the line. Goff's got it. Back, looks, throws, end zone. Yes, caught!
You know who we are.
10-5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
And you know where to find us. We won't be far. We'll be on your front porch waiting for you. We are the New Era Lions. And
we are driven by Detroit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another live stream edition of Motor City Mania. Currently, right now with me, I've got DC8091. We could be having some more people joining us here shortly, but until that time, it's just going to be me and DC for the time being. I know DC right now is a little bit under the weather, but he's here to play, and he's here to have fun all the same. How's it going, man?
All right. I've had worse.
Sounds about right, but I do apologize for, how late thereafter the game this video is coming out or this live stream is coming out. But let's be entirely fair here. Sunday night, we had the game against the Rams. That game didn't get over until damn near midnight. So I was like, we are not doing a post-game show at that point. Most people are going to bed, even as jacked up as they are. And then the very next night, we had the Bucs-Eagles game, and I'm like, listen, I want to watch that game. I'm not going to try and compete doing a live stream at the same time. So I'm like, listen, we're going to push it off. And the reason I didn't do it last night is because I wasn't feeling too particularly well myself. So I was like, we'll take care of it today, and we'll kind of combine the post-game element of Lions and Rams and kind of do a pre-game element, if you will, of Lions and Bucs. So it's kind of a how should I say it, a conglomeration of the two put together. But we'll see how well we do with this one. But anyway, coming in, Braylon Dennis says, "Sup, David?" And then he says, "This is odd, a live stream within the week." Yeah, like I was explaining, it's been a bit of an odd week. It has really been an odd week this week. However, though, I will say this, that for Sunday, we should be able to do it. It's going to be a bit tight because the Lions game is at 3, which means the game probably is not going to get over until around 7:30, which then means like almost as soon as the game is over, within like a half hour, 45 minutes of the game being over, we'll then do the post-game show. So it's going to be a crazy, crazy time on Sunday. That much I can guarantee you, but we'll see what happens all the same. Nick Burton says, will we have another home game if we win? That depends on the Niners and the Packers. If the Niners lose to the Packers, then yes, we would have another home game because the Niners hold the number 1 seed. Then the Lions would have the highest seed remaining in the NFC playoffs, which then means that the Packers would travel to Ford Field to play us. So that's the only way that happens if the Niners lose to the Packers. Braylon Dennis says usually live stream during the game. I do that, but like I said, I wasn't going to do a post-game live stream because it was literally like midnight when we got done with the live stream of the game, and I was just like, listen, we're not going that late. Braylon Dennis says, I'm going to root for a Packers upset, but that's all the Packers will get from me. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Packers can get the upset like they did against the Cowboys, but I'll be honest, I severely doubt that's going to happen. I really, really do, because the 49ers are just a much better team than the freaking Cowboys. They really are. And to me, it's just like, I don't see how that's going to really change because the 49ers have a great defense. I'm going to just say this right now. As far as I'm concerned, Brock Purdy is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott, and Deebo Samuel and who's the other folk for the 49ers, their other wide receiver that they have. I'm trying to remember his name. But they also have George Kittle. They've got a lot of great weapons on that offense. Also Trent Williams, a tackle. So I don't know how the Packers win against the 49ers, but it'll be interesting all the same. Rob Brown says they're keeping Houston's decision a secret. Nobody talking about it, and time's up. Again, I don't think that they're going to understand what I'm about to say here, Rob. I don't think that they're going to sit James Houston. I don't think that's going to happen. Dan Campbell can say all he wants that, we're not going to put a player out there if it's a potential risk to his long-term health. it can't be a potential risk to his long-term health if he practiced fully the entire 3 days last week, and they just released in their practice report that had they practiced, James Houston would have been a full participant. For me, it's just like, listen, as far as I'm concerned, I fully 100% expect that James Houston's going to be activated and he's going to play this week against the Bucs. I would be absolutely shocked if it weren't to happen. Braylon says, my prediction is the Packers versus Lions for an NFC title game. He says he's calling it. He then reminds me that the other wide receiver for the 49ers is Brandon Ayuk, which that does sound correct. I just could not remember his name for the life of me. Anthony Chadwick says, I hope we take the Bucs seriously. Look what happened to us with the Packers and the Bears. I don't think that's going to have to be a problem because, again, playoffs, you don't really have to worry about people, needing motivation for taking people seriously. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And you have to understand something here. This Lions team, it's hungry. They got that little taste of blood. They got that little taste of, the ability to taste what it's like to win a game in the playoffs, and they're going to want more. They are going to want more. Rob Brown says, is James Houston's 21 days up today? I don't know if it's up today or tomorrow, but I do know this. I'm not worrying about that for one simple reason. I know for a fact that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are not just going to simply say, we forgot what day it was when it was time to make a decision. They've already made a decision, and for them, I think they're just waiting until the last possible minute. And again, some of that might be because they're trying to keep the decision, stalling it for as long as possible. Maybe they just want to make sure that they got all the information they possibly could get. I don't know. But to me, we're going to see – I fully expect to see James Houston. Like I said, I can't see a reason why Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell would not play him after in 4 straight practice reports, he would have been listed as a full participant. It's like, listen, if the guy is a full participant in practice, we've seen him pushing and dragging sleds and weights and all this nonsense, play the damn man. Let him go out and play.
Oh, they will. I think they're just not letting Tampa know too much what to prepare for.
Well, I'm telling you this right now.
Give too much info out there.
You get James Houston and Hutchinson, who Hutchinson right now is just absolutely going nuts. You get those two out on the field, it's going to be a feeding frenzy.
Yep.
Chuck Osborne says, I can't wait for the Lions game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think there's a lot of people who can't wait for the Lions game against the Buccaneers because, first and foremost, I don't know if anyone else has seen this graphic that's been popping around on Facebook, but I think they said that the Lions-Rams game got the most primetime viewers since the Super Bowl. 35.8 million people were watching that game. And now they're saying that the Lions-Buccaneers playoff tickets are the most expensive in history. So it's like, listen, you take a look at everything. This is a game where I think everybody is waiting with great anticipation. Bubba Bew says, Houston isn't a good pass rusher. He is a phenomenal one. Absolutely. Perry Ball says, hey, David and DC, how are you guys doing tonight? I'm doing fine. It's definitely been snowing like crazy up here at Fort Drum, but, that's kind of the life you live up here. Braylon Dennis says, does Dan Campbell even have faith in James Houston? I feel like they're wasting his time and career at this point. I don't see why they wouldn't. Again, Braylon, understand something here. Every single time that we've had a player that has been injured, seriously injured, they have always been extremely cautious with the player. It's happened every single time. They did it with Swift. They did it with Taylor Decker. They've done it with every single player that's had serious injuries. They always are very cautious with the player because they don't want them coming back too soon to potentially get worse with another injury or the same injury. So I don't think it has anything to do with whether or not Campbell has faith in James Houston. I think it has more to do with the fact they just want to make sure he is 100% ready to go. Nick Burton says, can I see us having a Texans-Lions Super Bowl? Ooh, that would be an interesting one. Do I think the Lions could get to the Super Bowl? I think there's an outside shot. I think there is because I think that we can beat the Niners, but that'd be a really hard sell at this point. I'm not saying we can't, but I think we can. The harder sell for me is the Texans getting past either Buffalo, Kansas City, or the freaking, Ravens. because it's like, listen, I don't see how the Ravens are going to lose to the Texans. Like, the Texans have had a great year this year. They have been absolutely stupendous this year. CJ Stroud has been great. The D'Amico Ryans has done a great job with that team. But it's like, listen, the Ravens have championship pedigree. They have arguably the second best head coach in the league as far as experience is concerned, outside of Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick. So it's just like, listen, I don't know how they win that game. Can they? Yes. Will they? Probably not. Same thing, in my opinion, with the Packers and the 49ers. The game that's really going to be intriguing to me is the Bills-Chiefs matchup, because that one, we've seen that one play several times before, and I'm just curious to see who wins that game, because this year, I'm sorry to put it, but Josh Allen has had a really big problem with turnovers, and on the opposite end, Patrick Mahomes has had a really hard time with his receivers catching his passes. So it's like, I don't know who's going to win that game, but whoever does, it's going to be interesting all the same. Joseph Ostin says, Hutchinson said he's healed from the blindside hit he took after his interception. That was a long time ago. He hasn't had an interception in weeks. Low Esteem says, man, I was afraid to pull for Philly and Tampa Bay. Didn't want to jinx us by unexpectedly pulling for the tougher win. First inclination was Tampa, but their defense is stout and offense look good. Okay, Low Esteem, let me just put something out here. Anything we saw of the Bucs against the Eagles, take that with a slight grain of salt here. I'm not saying that the Bucs aren't a good team, but that Eagles team literally limped its way into the playoffs, and I am surprised that they even got in with how poorly they were playing at the end. They lost 5 out of their last 6 matchups, and the only one that they won was barely beating the Giants, and that was like a bare squeaker. So for me, it's like, listen, Tampa might have looked good against a bad Eagles team, but it's like, listen, they're going to be traveling on the road to our place, and we just got done beating the Rams, who a lot of analysts said was the scariest wild card team. So for me, it's like, listen, the only thing with that statement I will agree is that the Tampa Bay's defense is really good, at least as far as run and as far as other areas. But the one area they suck is the pass defense. They're terrible in pass defense. And I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts is not the same quarterback he was last year. That is a damn for sure fact. Pardon me. Braylon Dennis says, I'm just saying, David, if he, and he's referring to Houston again, is ready to play, you play him. Again, I agree. I am very much of that mindset. If the player says he can play, if the player's good to go, then you play the man. But again, it's not our decision to make. It's up to Dan Campbell and the training staff. Barry Ball says we'll have more guys back from injury or healthy. Yes, we're definitely going to have a lot more guys back from injury, especially in comparison to the last game, because the last time we played the Bucs, we were missing a hellacious amount of starters. We didn't have Jonah Jackson. We didn't have Gibbs. We lost Monty in the game. We didn't have CJ. We didn't have CJ Gardner-Johnson. We didn't have Brian Branch. We didn't have James Houston. I mean, we were just without a lot of key players in that matchup, and we still won. Burns says, if we get a Chiefs-Lions Super Bowl, please give us an Eminem and Swift rap battle. Oh, that'd be funny. That would be epically funny. I think Eminem would win in a heartbeat, but still funny. Grit says, we don't have the same information they have. There's a reason they're taking time. Bo Booth says, good afternoon, David. 4 feet of snow on my patio in northern Michigan. I'm going to be on the couch bound watching Lions history again this weekend. I don't have 4 feet here, but I've got about a good 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet outside. Rob Brown says, nobody had to wait 21 days to be activated. I also agree with your view. It would be foolish to not use your talent to your advantage. I'll just listen in now. Josh Waz says it's going to be a Ravens and Lions rematch. That'd be an interesting Super Bowl too.
No, it wouldn't.
I'm just simply saying, like, the rematch nonsense this year has been ridiculous. Grit says the Bucs offense was going up against Matt Patricia. I rest my case. That's a good point. That is a good point. Chuck Osborne says the Eagles also have Matt Patricia as their defensive coordinator, so that didn't really help them. Perry Ball says Mahomes is having a down year. He's been having a down year all year. Like, in part and parcel is because of his wide receivers, but I think also people are starting to really understand what's the best way to stop Mahomes. Nick Burton says he wants Rex Ryan for our defensive coordinator. I don't know if I want Rex. He's been in the booth for a little while too now. I would much rather prefer someone who's been in the game for a bit. Again, John Fox, Kelvin Shepard, if we have to promote from within. The defensive coordinator or head coach from the Iowa Hawkeyes would be good ideas. I mean, there's a lot of different guys you could go with.
But hell, talk about a kneecap biting wild man. Rex Ryan would fit in perfect here.
He would.
That.
He would, but I'm just curious if, that's going to be something.
Agreed. He's been out too long, but he would fit in perfect.
Well, as far as the ideology, at least, anyway.
Yep.
Grumpy Grandpa says, we'll get a replay from the first game of the season with Kansas City versus Detroit. I'm just going to say this right now. If Kansas City plays us, I think that's going to be even much more interesting of a matchup because when we played them the first time, they didn't have either Chris Jones or Travis Kelce in that game. But to also be fair, we were still trying to figure out who we were as a team. So we'll see what happens. Grit says Rex loves the Lions. That's great. Perry Ball says they need to use Houston Wright. He's a pass rusher. I 100% agree. Nick Burton says, out of our NFL announcers, I'm liking is Rex Ryan. He's been having faith in us. That is true. Every time I've heard Rex talk about the Lions, he's always been very respectful. Bo Boo says, in-house promotion for both DC and OC replacements. Again, I don't know if we're going to be losing either of our coordinators this year. It seems very, very likely with the amount of coaching vacancies that there are, but we'll see what happens. Lois Team says, what happened to Rex's brother, Rob? He was around for a while. I mean, I don't know what happened to Rob Ryan. I think he's still in the league, but I think he's kind of more like an advisor now or a position coach because he hasn't been a defensive coordinator for a while.
Yep.
But that's just my personal thoughts on the matter. Anyway, having said that, let's get into our first comment or first topic of the night. So here we go. As we all know, any part of the show will be devoted to audience questions and or comments. So with that having been established, I'll start with you, DC, since you're the only one here other than me. Who are your winners for the Lions playoff game over the Rams?
Winners, absolutely, JG. That's a given. Second one is Jack Fox for kicking a damn near perfect punt to help us win that.
Okay.
And third would be Sean McVay for being so fucking arrogant. He says, let's punt it because Jared Goff can't win a big game instead of taking chances on a poor defense, on a porous defense with a secondary that wasn't having a good game.
That's
when
actually
he
a good
decided
point.
to punt
I
it,
didn't
I
even
was
think
like,
of
yes.
I didn't even think about that with the decision to punt. That was not even something that, crossed my brain. So that's actually a good point you just made. So here's what I'm going to say my winners are. Obviously, Goff deserves to be the biggest winner because, listen, the entire freaking narrative all last week was Goff, Stafford, McVay. It was the freaking three caballeros, the freaking love triangle from hell nonsense. All anybody was talking about was Goff and Stafford and McVay. That was literally all anybody was caring to talk about. And Goff went out there, proved the naysayers wrong, that he can play in a big game, that he can win big games, and he went out there and he played perfectly almost because Jared Goff is one of, I think, 5 or 6 quarterbacks that put up the stats that he did, and 3 or 4 of the guys that are on that list are Hall of Famers. So it's like, okay,
Yep.
Goff went out there and did a damn perfect job because, again, the amount of throws he missed, I can put on one hand, which is 5 exactly. Another big winner, in my opinion, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown always freaking comes up in the clutch. He makes great freaking plays. I thought that he had an excellent game. Going to give a shout out to is also Josh Reynolds because he was another Ram that used to play with Goff and the Rams and McVay, and he came up, made a lot of big catches for us, so I thought he did a really good job. I'm going to give another little unsung hero some love here. Michael Badgley making that 54-yard field goal because without that field goal, we don't win. And
I was worried about that one.
All freaking year, all we ever heard from Lions fans is, Patterson sucks, Badgley sucks. And it's like, listen, when we absolutely had to have it, Badgley went out there and he kicked a pipe right down the middle. Just did a great job. Hutchinson did a great job, got 2 sacks. He's had now 3 or 4 straight games of multi-sacks, so he's doing great. And I think just the fans of Detroit in general are winners because it's like, listen, 32 fucking years you had to wait, but it finally damn well happened. So those are my biggest playoff victory winners for the Lions. Let's take a look at some of these comments here really quickly. George Vanderveven says, any word on Houston yet? No word yet, but I expect that he will play. Nick Burton says, DC for defensive coordinator. He better be better than Aaron Glenn.
Agreed.
Braylon Dennis says winners for him were Goff, St. Brown, and Monty. Yeah, Monty had a good game. He definitely had an impact when he played, which that kind of bugged me when he wasn't playing the second half for most of it. Dwayne King puts in what I said about Badgley. Chuck Osborne says winner Goff in the offense. King SJ says, hey, guys, I still got goosebumps from that win. Oh, I guarantee you those are going to be there for a while. Braylon Dennis says, also forgot about Reynolds. Thanks, David. Tom Spagnolio says, winner, Laporta for avoiding major injury and contributing even at 70 to 80%. That is a very good point. He only had 3 catches, but one of those catches was for a touchdown, which was very, very important. Grit says, winner, the fans. Forced them to waste 2 timeouts. That is true. We were loud as hell in Ford Field, and we're going to be even louder this Sunday, I believe. Burns says, winners, water boys. Got to stay hydrated.
Unsung heroes.
Yep. The Grumpy Grandpa says, what's your opinion on the Green Bay and 49ers game? Do you think Green Bay will get it done and the Lions will have to face Green Bay? I'm going to say this. Before they played Dallas, I would have given them no shot. Absolutely no shot in hell for the Packers to even get to play the 49ers. But after what I saw the Packers do to the Cowboys, I think they have a shot, but it's a very outside shot. I mean, San Francisco, like, how many freaking years has San Fran gotten to the freaking conference championship game? Like 2 or 3 now in a row? It's like they're used to this. Green Bay is extremely young. They have virtually no playoff experience in the major positions. And yeah, they had a great win against the Cowboys, but it's like, dude, you're going up against the NFC heavyweight. You're going up against the Niners at Levi Stadium. That's a completely different animal. So for me, it's like, do they have a shot? Yeah, they do. But do I think they have a really good one? No. Facebook user says Jesse Minter for DC. I don't know who Jesse Minter is. I'll have to look that up. Dwayne Keene says, if you smell what the Lions is cooking this Sunday afternoon, kicking Tampa Bay Buccaneers ass and moving on to the next round. Toxic FPV says the run game was it. I'm assuming he meant lit. West Coast Lion says fans over the years because I'm from California. Hashtag 1978 baby. Perry Ball says, where do you think Belichick will end up? Honestly, I think he's going to go to Atlanta because from what I've been hearing, there's a lot of mutual interest between him and Atlanta. So I think the Atlanta Falcons will become his new home. Victor David says Lions have to apply pressure to pass Happy Mayfield on every down. I fully expect they will. Vision Stell says, I hope we don't overlook any teams and focus on the team we have up next, which I fully expect that's exactly what Dan Campbell has going on in that locker room. Grumpy Grandpa says, Love had a good game, and unfortunately we have history with Green Bay putting us out of the playoffs. That is true, but also at the same time, Love's no Rodgers, and he sure as hell ain't no Favre. Let's see here. Ronald Nurstel says, I'd rather face Green Bay than the 49ers. I'm fine with facing either of them. Rob Brown says, Buffalo media having a cow as they play at 6 p.m. time slot and it's really cold. They feel they should have the Lions time slot. Thoughts? It's Buffalo. It's winter. It's going to be cold no matter if it's at 3 or 6, so get over it.
Yep.
Dean DeGreer says, will the Packers scare you if they beat the Niners? I don't know if they'll scare me, but they'll definitely intimidate me a little bit because that will be something I would not be expecting. Answer 14 says, the team is one. They are iron. They will dominate. Toxic FPV says, I honestly think the Lions match up better against the Niners than the Packers. Facebook user says, Minter is U of M's defensive coordinator. It'd be interesting. Grit says Mike McCarthy was not coaching like a head coach who cared to win. In my opinion, his job was already gone anyway. I mean, if he'd have won, probably not, but I see the point you're trying to make there. George Vanderveven says, if it comes down to it, I think the Lions bring Jordan Love back down to earth.
Agreed.
Grumpy Grandpa says, I think as long as Detroit can establish the run game against Tampa, we should have no issues. Well, that's going to be the big problem there, is that Tampa's run defense is just as good as our run defense. And the last time we played the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we were starting to get something going when we had Montgomery in there, but then Montgomery got hurt. So that's a really, really key matchup, is to see how that whole dynamic works out. Because like I said in my previous video today, the Bucs have not seen Jahmyr Gibbs play. They've only seen him on tape. So they don't know how fast or how quick or, whatever Gibbs is. And Montgomery was already doing a pretty good job, which then left the whole game on Goff's shoulders, which we've seen that he could do. So to me, it's like, listen, that's going to be a good matchup, but we'll have to see how it goes. King SJ says Buffalo has 3 extra hours to clear the snow out of the stands. Well, if they get people in there early, it doesn't matter, again, if they start at 6 or 3. The earlier you start, the quicker you clear out the snow. Anthony Chadwick says the Niners are not the same team without McCaffrey. They're not the same team without McCaffrey. They're not the same team without Purdy. They're not the same team without Debo. They're not the same team with almost any of those guys. So for me, it's like, listen, if one of them's out, it's going to drastically change how that team operates. Galloping Lake 6 says, I just logged on. Hello, Lions fans. Is it true that Houston is playing this Sunday? I haven't heard if he's playing or not. I just know that in the practice report from today, he was listed in the estimate practice report as a full participant, which is now 4 straight full participation practices. So for me, it's like, I can't see any reason why he wouldn't play.
They aren't going to announce it to Sunday if he does.
Maybe. I don't know. Chuck Osborne says, I read something that Belichick could end up at Dallas. I don't think that's likely for one simple reason. While Belichick and Jerry Jones have a good personal relationship and friendly, that does not always mean it's a good business relationship. And Belichick and Jerry Jones are 2 very stubborn old men who have very pointed ideas about how a team is supposed to be ran. And Belichick is, how do I put this? Jerry Jones is all about the limelight. He's all about the newsreels. He's all about the media. Belichick is the exact opposite of that. He hates the media. So I don't see how that relationship would work if it were to go down. But again, that's just me. All right, let's move into our next topic here. So let me take down that comment actually really quickly. So, DC, for you, were there any losers, in your opinion, for the Lions from this game against the Rams?
I thought Cameron Sutton certainly didn't have his best game. In fact, one of his worst ones. He bit it too early, and yeah. But I mean, on the other hand, Nakua's yards, while they look gaudy, they were really on 2 plays that were both kind of screw-ups. But other than that, that would be about the main one. I mean, no major drops, no major misplays. I do think Aaron Glenn needs to tighten shit up more.
I do agree with that too.
Stop just letting them saying, okay, we won by 1 point. A win's a win. I think we need to be a lot more conservative and start getting turnovers, a lot more turnovers than we have been getting.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. I think losers-wise, and again, this is kind of a very interesting way for me to put this. I do consider Cam Sutton a loser because of the fact that, I hate using the term loser, but it's like when you're talking about winners and losers, who's up, who's down. Cameron Sutton's definitely in the down loser category because it's like, listen, for the last literally 3-4 weeks, he's been getting roasted, roasted. And it's just like, that's something that is very concerning, considering the fact that when we signed him, he was supposed to be our major free agent acquisition for the defensive secondary. And it's just like, it has not resulted very well in what we were looking for. He's only got 1 pick on the year. The last couple of games of the year, he's been absolutely just trash in regards to coverage. Now, again, is that totally on him? I don't expect it to be because, again, I think there's something wrong with the scheme itself. And also we don't know what's going on the field 100% of the time. But it's just like he didn't have a good game in my opinion. Somebody else that I think I'm going to probably throw in here for one simple reason is just the simple nature of the fact is, how do I put this? I think also you got to throw in the fact of I hate to say it, but I would also throw in CJ Gardner-Johnson because it's like, listen, it's like him and Cameron Sutton were both having problems. And again, I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's coverage. I don't know if there was just miscommunication, but it's like Nakua and Stafford were just literally lighting them up every single play, it seemed like almost. And it was just like, at some point you just got to hope and pray that either Stafford would misfire, he would get hit or something. And eventually it did, but it's just like those were two guys that I thought were really having a hard time in that game against the Rams. Otherwise, I like the fact that we were getting pressure on Stafford. I like the fact that our run defense was doing good. I thought Anzalone did well. I thought Jack Campbell did well. It's just that defensive secondary always makes me kind of like hold my breath a little bit. And then obviously, I mean, I'm just going to say this as far as losers are concerned. I'm just going to say this right now. I've already talked about it, and it's the last time I'm going to bring it up. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm trying to remember my show notes here. But as far as losers are concerned, I've got to put the Staffords in it because it's like, listen, the whole nonsense drama, whatever you want to call it, with Kelly saying that her kids were booed, and then Matthew after the game saying he was happy for the players but not for the organization or the fans after everything he knows they went through. I just thought that was a whole bunch of petty, nonsensical drama. And it's like, listen, I get it. You lost. You don't like losing. I get it. Stafford was booed when he came on the field. But what the hell do you honestly expect? Did you honestly think that he was going to receive a warm welcome coming back to Detroit? Your own comments said that you didn't expect it. But now you're saying that all these other things happened, which we've come to find out later that those statements were re-clarified or taken back because they were inaccurate. So to me, it's just like this whole drama that has happened once again with Kelly and now Matthew even getting involved into it. That to me is kind of a loss because it's like, listen, Matthew and Kelly are always going to be a part of Detroit. They're always going to be a part of our city and our team. But it's just like, dude, this is the kind of stuff that starts all those freaking things that happen with both Barry and Calvin that start that animosity crap. And it's just like, listen, it's not needed. At least not in my opinion.
Kelly's just trying to get some topics for her podcast.
I don't think she needs help in that regard, but that's just me personally. All right, here. Let's take a look-see here. Braylon Dennis says losers. Aaron Glenn. Ronald Nurstel says, what percentage do Lions have to win the Super Bowl? I mean, first winning the NFC Conference Championship, then getting to a Super Bowl and winning it, I would say I would place their best shot at probably about 25, 30%. Because it's just like, listen, the Ravens are a damn good team. Bills are a good team. Chiefs have already won a Super Bowl. They're a good team. And you still got to get past the Niners. Like, there's some heavyweights that the Lions are going to have to deal with. Toxic FPV says, CJ missing the tackle at the end zone, ran right in front of Nakua. Dean DeGreer says losers were Sutton and Vildor. Yeah, Nick Vildor didn't have a good game either. Low Esteem says defense gave up a couple of big plays, but they have been playing better the last few weeks in almost every other category except pass defense. I would agree with you. King SJ says losers are pass rush and secondary. I would say pass rush, save Aiden Hutchinson. Bo Booth says no end zone from the red zone. AG did enough. Offense can't stall in the second half again. Facebook user says Cam Sutton needs to be moved to the number 2 cornerback because he's not a number 1. He may not be a number 1, but he's the best one we've got, so that means he stays at number 1.
Yeah, who's the number 1 on this? Who's the number 1 then? Vildor?
Yeah, exactly. Or possibly Will Harris, or possibly Jerry Jacobs.
Yep.
George Vanderveven says Lions don't want to play against any mobile QB. Well, so far they haven't had to in a while, and they're not going to until probably the Super Bowl if that does happen. King SJ says red zone defense saved. I'm not going to say much about the red zone defense because our red zone defense is trash. Like, it stepped up that game, but on the year, our red zone defense has been horrible. Yep. Steve O'Baby says the losers are actually the Lions defense. They are no second chances in the playoffs. That is true. KMG King says AG is fine. He's done awesome with what we have. We have to realize our cornerbacks are trash, and Sutton is not a cornerback 1. He's a cornerback 2. Again, I understand what you guys are saying here, but at the same time, was or was not Aaron Glenn a former cornerback? You're going to tell me that as a former cornerback, he can't take a guy like Cameron Sutton and elevate his game to become a cornerback 1? That to me just makes no sense. King SJ says red zone defense stopped the bleeding. Luckily, that I will agree. Luckily, Perry Ball says, could Sutton be banged up? He is banged up. Last time I checked, he was dealing with a toe injury. King SJ says, Matthew and Kelly, I can see being booed. I don't see any of the boos being directed at their kids, which is exactly what I said. King SJ says, love what Matthew brought to Detroit, but I don't miss the Kelly drama. I mean, all I'm going to say is that when she was here, we heard her name in the headlines more often than what I wanted to. Heath says, I will say this, win or lose, it saves the Buccaneers coach from being fired this year. You're referring to Bowles. Perry Ball says, Kelly was mad because the Lions didn't put her in the box with the Fords. Facebook user says, Kelly is a pain. She's always running her mouth. Answer 14 says, the secondary gets pretty sticky when we get in the red zone. Once the over-the-top threat is gone, they play pretty tight. Yes, it's a weakness, but maybe it's one we can survive. Toxic FPV says, look, nobody cares about Stafford's kids. Kelly has always looked for a reason to run her mouth. I love Matt, and I'm glad Kelly made it through her health stuff, but, man, I feel bad. KMG King says she eventually admitted fans weren't booing her kids. They was booing her. She definitely was just trying to get clicks for her podcast. The Grumpy Grandpa says, have faith, man. This is our year. We're 100% going to the Super Bowl. Toxic FPV says, I feel bad for Matt having to live with her. I'm not going to say that. That's you. Because I'm not going to speak ill about any man's wife. I'm just going to say, hey, that's what she said. I may or may not agree with it. J Mommy says, this sounds crazy, but I believe the Packers will win that game against the 49ers. Toxic FPV says, I think Gilmore needs to get some game time. I've been wanting to see Stephen Gilmore ever since the preseason. I thought he did excellent in the preseason, and I think the fact that we haven't seen him at all is kind of a bit of a travesty, along with Broderick Martin. Low Esteem says, what's your thoughts on why the offense struggled in the second half a few times recently? Is it defensive adjustments, mistakes, conservative play calling, or a combo? Honestly, I think it's a combination of the defense making adjustments, and I also think it's a problem with the fact of conservative play calling. But I also think another reason is because where the hell was David Montgomery in the second half? For the second half, we just kept seeing a whole bunch of Craig Reynolds and very little of Jahmyr Gibbs and almost no David Montgomery until like the fourth quarter. I said it so many times on my live podcast for the game. I'm like, where the hell is Montgomery? I'm like, is he injured? I haven't heard anything.
Resting him or what?
Yeah, it was just like, where the hell did he go? Because when Montgomery was in there, we were running the ball. We had a perfect balance on offense, and it was keeping the Rams off balance. But as soon as he left, everything changed. So for me, I think that was the problem, was that because he was gone for whatever reason, it changed our ability to call plays. And then obviously the defense made adjustments because let's understand something here. Raheem Morris is a good defensive coordinator. He's going to make adjustments. Lester White says it's not the scheme. Puka put a stop on Sutton and fooled him. You have Sutton and Vildor, a guy the Lions took off the couch and who could not even make another NFL roster. He was on the practice squad for another team. So while he didn't make the active roster, he still was on the roster.
If the scheme is let two questionable corners go one-on-one against your best corners without any help, without any additional blitzing, and without any pass rush, then that is a scheme problem. If the scheme is adjusting around holes in the talent that you clearly have or holes in the personnel, it isn't just sitting there, we'll run my scheme and the next man up just does it like he should. It's for them not to get help and not to, do something else to confuse the defense, offense, and make it harder on them and easier on the secondary, then yes, that is a scheme issue.
Mm. George Vanderveven says Goff is a winner because he showed class throughout the entire soap opera that the Staffords made it. I mean, Staffords and McVay. Don't take McVay out of that little loop.
Oh, God, yeah.
MRG 4DA Free says there's a lot of talk about the 49ers and Packers, but we should focus on Tampa. They have great personnel and playoff experience on both sides of the ball. Yes, they do. Grumpy Grandpa says, I agree. I think Green Bay will win that game. I also think the Texans will come through with the upset. If the Texans beat the Ravens, I think that will be probably one of the biggest shocks in the entire NFL world, to be honest. KMG King says, I would much rather see Gilmore than Vildor myself. Anthony Chadwick says that Kelly is a tough woman who thought she wouldn't stick up for her hubby. Again, it has nothing to do with sticking up for your husband or your wife. I get that part. But what I don't get is that, okay, you didn't necessarily have a problem with your husband being booed because you said you didn't have a problem with the husband being booed. You said you didn't have a problem with yourself being booed, but yet you bring your children into this, and then you make comments later re-clarifying your position, saying that, oh, actually my children weren't being booed. It was me and Matthew, and we knew it. So if you're saying you didn't have a problem with it and then say it was your children being booed and then re-clarify later, then I'm trying to figure out here, what exactly the hell is your problem? Because the only other statement the only other problem that you stated was the hypothetical jersey ban that was proposed by Detroit Line, and that was never going to happen in the first place. There's no way the Fords were going to institute a jersey ban on Matthew Stafford Lions jerseys. That was just stupid. So again, opening mouth, inserting foot, and making drama where there was no need for it.
She's trying to compete with Taylor Swift. Who's going to be
there's no competition there.
Well, no, but you have to be the woman who's now the most popular one in the NFL.
Yeah, well, either way. Steve O'Baby says, is there a Detroit Lions where playing the Rams in Los Angeles, they would be doing the same thing, booing Jared Goff fans, had every right to boo Matthew Stafford? Well, let me put it to you this way. Name a time when a quarterback has gone back to a stadium and has not been booed. The only time I can think of is either when Tom Brady went back to New England or when Peyton Manning went back to Indianapolis. Otherwise, when Brett Favre went back to Green Bay, he was booed up to hell. They booed him the whole game.
The Rams don't have any fans.
Well,
Lions fans are from somebody else. I mean, there's people in the stands, but
the Rams have fans. It's just they don't have diehard fans, and if they do, they're very, very minimalist. Because the Rams are in a city that is so saturated with sports. Like again, they've got 2 baseball franchises, 3 basketball franchises, hockey. I mean, there's so many different franchises in LA. It's like, listen, you're not going to have a whole lot of diehard anything for any one particular group. And it's not like the Rams have the same amount of success that other franchises in LA have had, because the Rams have what? 2 Super Bowl titles to the Lakers. How many?
Exactly. And it's also very transient. Like the whole time I was there, I met like 2 people who were actually born in LA. Well, everyone else was from somewhere else who moved there. So that's
it's the same thing with other populated cities too, like Vegas. So it just happens. Grit says, as a man that's been married for 22 years, I respect that response, David. Thank you. Lester White says, Gilmore needs to put on NFL weight. He'll get killed out there. His time is coming. Answer 14 says, it was strange because normally you keep doing what works until they stop you. We kept making changes until they stopped us. Are you referring to the defense or are you referring to the offense? Toxic FPV says, we also held the Bucs to 6 points in Tampa without our run game. That is crucial because we're going to have both of our running backs. We're going to have our full complementary offensive line, and we're going to be at home. Lester White says, the Lions play cover 3 and the cornerback's job is not to get beat deep. That's not the scheme. Okay, they don't just run cover 3 all the time. Even Aaron Glenn himself said they don't just run cover 3 zone all the time. They do also run man. So again, their scheme is based upon whatever Glenn is calling. It's not just, we're going to run zone all the time. We're not just going to run off-ball edge rush or on-ball edge rush. That's not what that happens. Watch the entirety of the game. You will see exactly what Glenn is saying. They mix it up. But the problem is where they mix or where they zig and zag, it doesn't match up with what the offense is doing, at least not all the time. Christopher Posdell says we need to keep Evans in check this coming Sunday. He is a game breaker. Him and Godwin are both game breakers. Grumpy Grandpa says, I thought their kids' coach were pretty cool. Said born in Detroit, raised in LA. Yeah, that is pretty neat. George Vanderveven says, everything being equal, the Lions offense has more balance and weapons than the Bucs. That is definitely true. Smoke Jones says, if the Lions lose the Buck games, does it invalidate the Campbell Goff's last year and a half? This is what have you done for me lately, league? No, I don't think so at all. Because again, who was the last coach quarterback combination that got to a division title and won a playoff game? That was Fonts and Kramer, and that was in 1991. If losing a playoff game in the divisional round against the Bucs completely invalidates that, then I'd say you're a rather fickle fan. That's just me personally. The Grumpy Grandpa says, I've been a Detroit Lions fan since I knew what a TV was, just turned 44 yesterday. That's a long time waiting. This is our year. King SJ says the Rams are third tops in LA behind the Lakers and Dodgers, and even that I'm not so sure. Answer 14 says the answer to my question was offense. Braylon Dennis says, I believe answer 24 was talking about offense. Chuck Osborne says, Days of Our Lives, starring the Staffords. Perry Ball says they better not use Craig Reynolds too much next game. They're not. They're going to have both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They're going to play them. Craig Reynolds, I don't know why he was out there. The only thing I can think of is either both of those guys needed breathers, they weren't feeling well, or something. Dean DeGreer says, do you think Sutton lacks man-to-man cover skills? No, I don't. Because, again, where did Sutton come from? He came from freaking Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has always been known for its physical man-to-man defenses and also for its ability to play in zone. I mean, for crying out loud, they had the guy at the defensive coordinator there for years who was the perfectionist of the zone blitz, Dick LeBeau. So for me, it's like, listen, I don't think that he has a problem covering in man-to-man. Lester White says, of course, the Lions mix it up. Quarterbacks make adjustments at the line of scrimmage based on what the QB sees. Offense makes the final adjustments at the line of scrimmage. Okay, but that's my whole point. Just because the offense is making adjustments doesn't mean that the defense also can't make adjustments. I've heard the freaking, audio shows that come out later. When the quarterback makes adjustments, so do the freaking defense. So it's not like, that, hey, you know what? Just because the offense makes an adjustment, we can't make an adjustment. It happens. It's a chess game that's literally happening on the field. We're just not always hearing it or seeing it. Michael Powell says, do I think they will use J-Mo more and try to go deep to him? He had a long touchdown against them last game. I think they do. Because, again, you have to think about it. The Bucs have been just as bad on defense in terms of the passing game as we have been. So it's like, okay, there's also the possibility that we get Raymond back too. Not for 100% sure, but there's a possibility we get him back too. So think about it. If you've got Sam Laporta, you've got freaking J-Mo, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, you've got Josh Reynolds, and you've got all those other pieces, you've now got a literal bevy of weapons to send into that Bucs defensive secondary, and all you've got to do is just give Goff some time, which when Goff has a little bit of time, he can carve up people. So for me, it's like, you know what? I'm totally cool with that. Josh J. Brock said, did Gibbs and Montgomery already beat Sanders' 2,000-yard record? I mean, together they had over – did they have over 2,000 yards?
No, they were short.
I think they were just short because I think Montgomery got over 1,000 yards, like barely over 1,000, and I think Gibbs came up short by about maybe 20 or so yards to get into that same category. Jason says, Bucs scare me a little. It's hard to beat a team twice. We beat the Vikings twice, so I would say that's not 100% true, and we beat them twice in literally the span of 3 weeks. Braylon Dennis says, if Devonta Smith from the Eagles was carving up the Bucs defense, then our receivers can do the same damn thing. I agree. And Devonta Smith was literally the only weapon that the Eagles have. We've got literally like 3 or 4 of them. But, all right, let's move on to this next topic here. So, DC, here's the topic. How do you feel after the Lions won their first playoff win in 32 years? So I just got to ask, what was going through your mind? What were you feeling that whole sort of like just moment when you knew that you were going to win?
Next game. It's about time. I would have loved it if we had actually blown them out. It was closer than I liked it, than I wanted it to be, but I'm like, okay, good, we got it. It was a nail biter. We didn't do much wrong. I thought our defense got furtherly exposed. I think our defense has been getting exposed over the past couple weeks. So I was still more concerned about how do we stop the bleeding on defense and going on to the next game.
All right, fair enough. I'm just going to say this. Like, for me, part of it was actually, kind of processing the information because I was like, okay, here. I'm now seeing something that has not happened in over a generation. Literally, it's taken 32 years for this to happen again. That's a whole generation of individuals because I myself am almost 30. So I'm like, this has not happened since before I was born. And I'm getting to see it with my own 2 eyes. So it's like, okay, I'm seeing history happening in the making here. Now, for me, it's like there was joy, jubilation, kind of a little bit of shock, I would say. I wouldn't say disbelief, but shock definitely. It was a good shock. So for me, it was just like, the ability to actually take all of that in and recognize, realize, and put into my own space of thought process what that truly meant. To me, what it made me feel like was like, okay, it was more so than anything, probably a sense of relief. Because that's probably the biggest thing about Lions fans, other than just the joy of winning the game, that also came along with it, was the sense of relief. Like, okay, we have finally freaking snapped that 30-plus year playoff drought. So to me, relief was probably one of the biggest things that came over me, is like, okay, we no longer have to hear it's been 30-plus years since we won a playoff game, blah, 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 blah. Because if it wasn't that, it was, the Lions have never won a Super Bowl. Well, it's like, okay, now you can't say we haven't won a playoff game in 30-plus years anymore. All right, let's take a look, see at some of these comments here. Facebook user says, Sutton's injury is hurting the team. The coaches need to make him sit. There's no way that's happening, dude. Any competitor is not going to just sit because they got a little old boo-boo. I mean, take a look at what freaking Baker Mayfield's doing with the Bucs right now. He's got rib injuries and ankle injuries to both ankles. There's no way the Bucs are going to have him sit, even if they could make him sit. There's no way they're going to get him to sit down. It's the same thing with Sutton. Braylon Dennis says, me personally, I'm super ecstatic. Lester White said, okay, dude, I'm not going to really argue with you anymore. You say what you say. I don't care. Christopher Posdal says euphoria is what he felt. Bo Booth says it was surreal, had so many emotions. Low Esteem says he's got to run, but great stream, fellows. Thank you for tuning in. Mr. Taz and Jay says this is going to be a good game. I wish everybody would just swallow their fears and see what is in front of you, which is a damn good team. Defense tightens up. We'll be operating on all cylinders. Yep. Juanderfall, I'm just going to say J791 says, justice prevailed. I'm 70. Brian Matis says, I remember the last time in 92, I was in high school. This Lions team is more well-rounded and plays better on the road than the 91-92 team. Agreed. For me, it was realizing that the Super Bowl may actually happen.
Yep, we didn't need to go in and play Washington next game either.
Washington right now is kind of trying to figure their shit out too.
Well, no, that Washington was pre-salary cap, and they had basically 3 Hall of Fame receivers and best offensive line in the league. I mean, so yeah, this year we don't have to go in and play that. So,
yep. Mr. Taz and Jr. says, let's enjoy it while we have it. I'm happy for all my years of being a fan. I just wish my dad, cousin, uncle, and aunt were here to enjoy it as well. Jay Mommy says, holding Stafford to 0-3 in the red zone with no touchdowns was an accomplishment. The defense did their job, and then the offense managed the clock. Perry Ball says, I was just starting high school when we last won the division and a playoff game. King SJ says, definitely agree, a sense of relief, partially disbelief, and super happy as well. Jason asks me, do I still feel that AG needs to go? Here's what I'm going to say. Do I feel he needs to go? Yes, but here's the reason why. It's not as emphatic as it used to be. The reason why I still think he needs to go is because personally, I don't think the defense is ever going to grow past where it is right now if he continues to be the defensive coordinator. I mean, again, AG, you can say that he's respected, but I don't think he's as talented as some people are trying to make him out to be, because it's like, listen, case in point here. Take a look at what DeMeco Ryans did with that Texans team in 1 year. They went from being one of the worst teams in the NFL to going to the playoffs and winning a playoff game with him as the head coach, and he's a defensive-minded head coach. AG has had 3 years here as the defensive coordinator, and we still have not found a way to make this defense at least above average. That, to me, is a problem, because it's like if DeMeco Ryans can take a whole team in Houston and make it into a playoff-winning team in one season, how the hell has defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn not been able to get a defense, not a whole team, a defense to that point? That, to me, is a bit of a problem. Braylon Dennis says, I was born in 98. I didn't get to witness our last playoff win, so I'm glad I'm alive to see it. Josh J. Brock says, I was working when the Lions won. I was running around the building screaming. Those in the building thought something happened. Long time coming. My grandpa would be proud. I'm just glad my grandparents were alive to see it as well, because they're getting up there, but they were alive to see it. Michael Powell says, I'm a lifelong Lions fan. I'm 63. I remember the 91 playoffs. After the 8-2 finish, I knew something special was coming. About damn time. Yep. Perry Ball says, I think Goff has passed Stafford now that he won the division and playoff game. Well, I think that's a no-brainer, because Stafford was here for 12 years. He only got close to winning the division crown one time, coughed that up to the Packers in 2014. And the only other time he got close to winning a playoff game, he coughed that up to the freaking Cowboys with 3 turnovers. So it's like, yeah, I would say Goff has surpassed him. And the fact that he did it by beating Stafford at Ford Field, I'd say definitely does it.
Either way, both of their names are going to be in the Ring of Honor one day. So,
oh, that's for sure. For sure, they'll be in the Lions Ring of Honor. All right, let's move into this topic here, because we kind of already talked about it previously. So I'm going to move into another topic here. So here you go, DC. I'm pretty sure this one's going to probably strike a little chord with you. But here we go. Kirby Joseph has caught a lot of heat after a second hit that ended a tight end season. First one being Hockenson, the second one being Higbee. Others have stated that the Lions were targeting Stafford when he was hit and when he got stepped on in the game. What are your thoughts on the potential that the Lions are playing dirty?
Okay. None. All right. One, if that would have been Brian Branch that would have hit him, or Kirby Joseph, it would have been a hell of a, I'm sorry, Brian Branch or CJ, that would have been a hell of a lot worse of a hit. 2, the targeting box, the tackling box has moved so far down, you're gonna get hit low. That's just what's gonna happen. That's why the injuries are up, and that's why they get hit. What's he gonna do? Hit him on the head? They're gonna say the same thing. I mean, really, do you hit a guy on his knee, break his ACL, or do you hit him on the head and, ring his bell a little bit? Anyone's going to bitch about that. And stepping on a player, man, get the fuck out of here. You never played damn football if you've never stepped on somebody. Well, just wussy shit. I mean,
I'll agree to that. What I'm saying is that I had comments on a preview. I had this one commenter actually got into this long diatribe with me going back and forth. He's like, oh, the Lions, they played dirty. They did. I'm like, dude, it's not a dirty hit. I'm like, for crying out loud, Kirby Joseph hit TJ Hockenson. Hockenson himself said afterwards it wasn't a dirty hit because it's not an illegal hit. But it's like, listen, even if it was an illegal hit, then how else are you supposed to tackle a person? How else are you supposed to tackle them?
They don't know what a dirty hit is. They see everything all slow mode and calm down and, all this, commentary on it. Well, see how one eye is closed and one eye is open. Do you see how his fingers aren't crossed and all this bullshit? And they say, see, that's a dirty hit. It's drama. Watch this thing at full speed and you tell me if that's a dirty hit. And if you tell me it is, you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Well, here's how I would dispel that argument really, really easily. I'd be like, oh, so you think that what Kirby Joseph did was a dirty hit. You think that Aiden Hutchinson accidentally stepping on Matthew Stafford was dirty. I'd be like, let me show you some plays here. Let me show you Dick Butkus. Let me show you Jack Lambert. Let me show you, Dick Night Train Lane. Let me show you freaking Tatum. Let me show you all those guys. And then you can tell me if that's a dirty hit versus what we just saw. Because that is not at all the same thing.
They're too soft and the narrative sucks.
I was about to say, I'd be like, if you really want to think about it here, you tell me what would happen if you put guys like Dick Butkus, Jack Lambert, Tatum, Night Train Lane, you put them in this league now, they would be literally banned. Because they would be considered a detriment to the game because they would be literally killing people.
They play defense.
Exactly. And it's like, listen, folks, it's like, how do I put this? For every kind of different safety measure you want to put in to keep players healthy, all that's going to do is it's going to come up with another way for somebody to try and make an adjustment so that way they can play the game. Case in point here, not to get political, but this is an argument that I've had with people in the past, people that are all about like super big on gun restrictions. If you put in all the gun restrictions in the world, do you honestly think that's going to stop somebody from trying to kill a person? They'll just find a different way to do it. Knife, rope, pipe, bomb. It's the same damn difference. So, okay, you take away the ability to tackle someone at the legs. Now they're just going to find a different way to tackle. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any safer. It's just going to mean they're going to find a different way to do it. It's the same damn difference.
Or the defenders are going to be the one getting hurt.
Exactly. So it's like, listen, football is designed to be like, okay, here. you're going to have some rules, obviously, because it is a sport. But at the same time, while you're playing the sport, your body is naturally going to contort and play a certain way so that way you can perform it at your best level. Case in point, everybody knows that low man wins. Well, you're not going to want to tackle a guy high because you've got no leverage at that point. You have to go low. So at that point, if you're going to tell me you can't tackle a guy in the legs, you're defeating the whole point of the sport.
Exactly. I think it's all just narrative and sensationalism.
I think it is too. And honestly, the way I look at it is this, is that it's never going to change because of the very same reason I just stated. If you take away a player's ability to go at a player's legs to tackle him, then you're in essence just pretty much playing flag football at that point. Because you're not allowing them to tackle where you're supposed to tackle, which is the legs. Because agree or disagree with me on this, DC, if you take out a person's legs, do they have the ability to run or not?
No. Well, typically, sometimes, depending on who the player is, the angles, and, how do you affect the balance? Do you hit them on their knees? Do you wrap up both legs? But, I mean, the headshot is still, and hitting high is A, how to stop a player, and B, I think is extremely overrated in terms and overpopularized as concussion this and concussion that because the NFL doesn't want to get paid. I mean, we talk about all the old players. Look at all the concussion problems that they had back then.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly any. And was that, because of diagnosis? No, because no one had concussions. They were pissed because they didn't play football. That was it. And then you get all the science in and then everyone jumps on it. But yeah, you bring up attacking players high. One, it also is going to make the offensive players, particularly the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, be more responsible and protect themselves more. Because when they don't protect themselves is when they get hurt and everyone points their finger at the defense.
Well, here's the other thing I look at it too is that, how do I put this, is that you have another sport out there that's just as equally as violent, that's just as equally as physical in rugby. Well, in rugby, they don't wear any sort of padding. It's like, listen, you got a shirt on, you might have some shin guards, and you got cleats. But yet you're getting in scrums and you're physically tackling just like you would in football. But yet the injury rates are nowhere near as bad. Why? Because of proper tackling form. Well, here's the thing. The NFL's been talking about proper tackling form for years. Well, what have they been talking about? Okay, when you're going to tackle, do not lead with your head. Make sure you see what you're tackling. That's exactly what Kirby Joseph did. You're supposed to take out the player's legs so that way they can't run. That's been the standard MO for years. That was what it was like when I was in high school. If you wrap up the player's legs or you take their legs out, they can't run. So again, if you start taking out the ability for players to tackle legs or go after legs, then at that point, you're taking out the ability to play the sport. And at that point, it's not football anymore, at least not regular football.
Exactly. They have a side drama.
Braylon Dennis says that they, who I'm referring to, need to shut the fuck up. This is an insult to our integrity as a team. Opposing fans should be ashamed and reprimanded for that. Facebook user says, wait, didn't Laporta just take a low hit that almost killed the season? Where the F was that headline at? Technically, actually, it wasn't a low hit. He got tackled and his foot got caught in the turf. That's a little bit different. King SJ says, wasn't a dirty hit by Kirby. Wrong place at wrong time for both recipients. Bo Booth says, ridiculous. DBs can't tackle high. They're outweighed by 30-plus pounds, and none of the players that were hit have an issue. Anthony Chadwick says the secondary is much improved without Jacobs. The only reason he had so many interceptions is because the opposing QBs were always throwing the ball his way. Wonder why. King SJ says Dan Campbell promotes the grit and biting kneecap mentality, but he does not encourage his players to play dirty. Absolutely he doesn't. Again, the way I've always said it is this. Dan Campbell is not about cheating. He's not about targeting. He's not about dirty play because he's all about the integrity of the sport.
Yeah, if you guys want to see a dirty player, go watch some old Andre Waters videos from the 80s or 90s. That was the original dirty player who only hit people in the back of their legs. So that's the dirty football player.
J791 says Woody Hayes was a dirty hit. Brian Mattis says Stafford was actually knocked unconscious briefly after being hit. Still, it was clean. The Lions haven't had a dirty player since Sue. Hutch, a dirty player? Get the fuck out of here. Bo Booth says several times it was obvious Hutch and company lit up on Stafford. Perry Ball says, if the NFL is trying to protect the players, but forget this is a rough game and players and the NFL need to understand their risk of injuries. Again, this goes back to when I was playing in high school and even in college. It's like, listen, you are playing a violent sport. There is an inherent risk of injury playing that sport. So if you understand that what you're getting into with this sport, you accept the risks. It's like, listen, you can try and make it as safe as you want to, but I'm going to kind of say this. It might be a little bit vulgar, but it's the truth. The more safe you make it, the more you pussify it.
Yeah, and the owners also don't want to pay health care.
Well,
so they figure that they can market safety and not have to pay health care for it. That's a big issue.
Bubble Yoop says, give the QB a laser-controlled uniform that senses touching or let them play like everyone else. That's awesome. Michael Powell says 10 years from now, it won't be the NFL. It will be the NFFL, National Flag Football League. Mr. Taz Jr. says, go check out what they used to do to receivers, QBs, tight ends, whatever in the early 90s. Shoot, there's even players getting tackled by the hair. I mean, it happens. It's not all bells and whistles. He then follows up and says, it's a man's man sport.
As it should be. You go run a route, you're going to get hit.
Bobo Yoop says, LOL, rugby guys and girls, since I dated a cute one that played at Dartmouth 40 years ago, all have a crooked nose, and they all wear it like a badge. LOL.
Damn right.
David George says, Dave, I have a funky feeling about this upcoming game. Don't have a funky feeling. Enjoy it for what it is. We'll see what happens one way or the other. George says, thank the powers above for Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, and Sheila Hampford. David George says, was James Houston activated? I don't know if he was activated. I have not heard if he was activated. The Grumpy Grandpa says, one day we're all going to wake up and they're going to trade the pads for pillows. I sincerely hope not. Football is, again, I say it now, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Football is a sport where it has a completely different dynamic than any other sport in the world, because it's like, listen, hockey is probably as close as you're going to get because it has the pads, it has the physicality, it has the raw, gritty edge to it. But football is one of those sports where the main point and purpose every single play is to hit somebody. Hockey's not that way. Hockey has that in there, but the whole point and purpose to football is you're running around and you're going to hit somebody. It's going to happen. Anthony Chadwick says, Butt Kiss was known to bite players at the bottom of piles. Yes, he was. He was also known to go into the locker room and lick himself clean, which I think is rather grotesque, but okay, power move.
I didn't lick myself clean, but I bet if you had one in my face mask, you're going to lose a finger.
Probably.
I'm sure.
Michael Powell says, does anyone remember the head coach paying players like contracts to take out other players? It wasn't a head coach. It was a defensive coordinator, and that was Greg Williams for the Saints.
Bountygate.
Yep. That caused a huge problem.
But hey, how did that team do that year?
Got all the way to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Because the team that they had to beat to get to the Super Bowl for the bounty gate was the Vikings, and they were paid a bounty after Brett Favre.
Yep.
Jay Mommy says, Houston had a full practice today. That is true. Perry Ball says, rugby is playing on real grass. That helps with less injuries. The fake grass leads to more leg injuries. That is, how do I put this? As far as things getting pulled, maybe, but as far as significant injuries, they've actually done the statistics. It doesn't really make much difference one way or the other. But I understand that with grass, real grass, it's much more giving and it's much more soft than artificial turf.
Well, look at Laporta.
Oh yeah,
he doesn't get hurt on grass on that play.
Hey, Coach, how's it going?
How's it going, fellas? I'm doing good, man.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you and Jay here get a moment to answer this because we've been talking about this for a while, but I'll just rephrase the question to you guys really quickly here. So I'll give it to you first, Coach. Kirby Joseph has caught a lot of heat after a second hit that ended a tight end season, the first one being Hawkinson, the second one being Higbee. Others have stated that the Lions were targeting Stafford when he was hit and stepped on in the game. What are your thoughts on the potential accusations that the Lions were playing dirty?
Football. It's football. I mean, what else you want him to do? If he hit him in the head, it's a personal foul. So he's stuck. He hitting him in the knees, or you just playing football. Things happen. I don't think it was malicious. If you watch the play wasn't malicious. It was a bang bang play. Matthew Stafford, and I played quarterback. Dave, I think you said you played quarterback. Things like that happen all the time when you getting hit by multiple people at the same time. You asked him Hutch to slow down at 265, 270 pounds after going full speed. It's football, man. Now, if it was the other way around, would this be a thing? If it was Jared Goff, they got hit. If it was Laporta, they got hit. Would this be a thing?
Probably not.
All right. So I guess because Dan Campbell said we bite kneecaps, I'm assuming now we're a dirty ball club. So no, just football,
I'm just gonna say this. When I was in college, there was this one play I had, and I've told this to people before, where I don't know if I had a concussion or not. Some people say that what I tell them, I did have a concussion, but I didn't feel like I did. I dropped back to pass because I had snapped the ball, and I think it was a 5-step drop. And for whatever reason, my line completely split open like the Red Sea. So I stepped up in the pocket. The next thing I know is I get a forearm across my head, and I just go straight to the turf. Like I'm just boom down. And I'm just like, oh, I'm seeing stars. So I get up, and I'm fine. I mean, I'm not disoriented or anything, but I can definitely see stars because I can see the bright flashing lights. They bring in another quarterback because I was in a small college. We had like 6-7 quarterbacks on the roster. And so they brought me out, and as soon as I got over, the training staff came over to me, and they're like, David, are you all right? And I'm like, yes, I'm not concussed. Because I knew that's what they were worried about because I got hit in the head. But
Did
it's
they
just
make you jump on the cup?
What?
Did they make you jump on the Gatorade cup? That was
no. I went.
Test. I'm like, I can't do that anyway. Shit.
No, when I got back to the sideline, all they did is they asked if I was all right. I knew what they were asking. And I was like, listen, no, I'm not concussed. They made me follow the finger with the eyes. They asked me some questions like, do you know what the date is? Do you know who the president of the United States is? And I'm like, yes, I know all this. And they're like, okay, you're fine. And I'm like, dude, that's just part of how the game is played. You're going to get your bell rung a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, I had that happen before side back. Got sidelined as a wide receiver.
Yeah, the crazy part, back when we all played, that was just called getting your bell rung. So
yeah, I got my bell rung a couple of times.
Yeah, man, a bunch.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure I had 4 or 5 concussions and just didn't know it. Just like, man, get up, get some water, shake it off, and go play.
When I was in high school, that would happen. You get hit really harder or something like that, and you'd be kind of staggering a little bit, but you're aware of your faculties and everything. And they'd be like, hey, pat you on the butt, be like, hey, good hit, get out there, rub some dirt on it, get back in the game.
Yeah, I'm right.
It's like, dude,
I run
unless
more bells than I got mine run.
I go back to what Brett Favre's father told me. He's like, listen, unless you can't walk or get off the field, you're staying out there. He's like, listen, unless you can't move, I'll come and get you. So it's like, listen, unless I was so unable to move or play, I wasn't coming out for anything. I literally, one time, I was in high school, again, playing quarterback, and I don't know what it was, but my coach decided, hey, we'll put in a Pike, and we'll have him run these quarterback draws. So I was in the gun, hike, I'd snap the ball, drop back, and then I'd do these draw plays up the middle, pick up like 5-10 yards easily every freaking time. Well, after about the 4th time of doing that, the defense kind of got savvy to the situation, and the whole defense decided to tackle me and landed on this shoulder. Next thing I hear is a big pop in my shoulder. I'm like, uh-oh. Didn't feel anything at the time, so I was like, okay, whatever, just shake it off. Go over to my coach. My coach calls I think he called an eye pro right slant play, like it was deuce slants over the middle. And he's like, hey, throw it to this guy. Because the guy was a backup. He hadn't gotten anything, so we wanted to include him in the game plan. Okay, whatever. So I get in, and I was like, okay, here's the play. I get under center. 1, 2, 3 step drop back. I pivot, and as soon as my arm got right about here to let the ball go, it instantly dropped. Like my entire shoulder just dropped. And then it started to throb and hurt and pain. Go to the coach. The coach then decides to call up another pass play. He decides to call a go route. I was like, damn it, coach, this is really starting to hurt, but whatever, we'll make it work. So he says, throw it to the same guy, get him involved. So call the play, Ball goes, throw it to the end zone. And I'm literally at this point, I can't even get my arm up fully. So I have to like get my arm to a position where I can use my entire shoulder mechanism and upper chest to just kind of put the torque on the ball. So I do that. Ball goes right here and it goes right through his arms. Like it was thrown as perfectly as possible. I went back out for one more drive and then I told the coach, listen, I can't go anymore. My shoulder is throbbing to death. I get take out of the game. I go to the hospital. I find out that I had a grade 1 AC separation joint. And I was like,
nice.
So I then had to spend the next week and a half in a sling because I couldn't move my arm. Which I'm like, well, the fact that I was able to throw 2 passes with that arm is kind of impressive.
Exactly. I mean, it would have been better if the guy caught that ball.
It would have, but unfortunately, he had the hands of stone. Like. Nobody ever threw to him because he couldn't catch anything. He couldn't catch a cold in winter. But anyway, Chemical, you just came in, so pretty much you probably picked up on the narrative that we're talking about here. Kirby Joseph, low hit, 2 tight ends that have been taken out with tore ACLs. People are saying also the hit on Stafford was dirty. What do you think about the accusations that, the Lions were targeting and playing dirty against the Rams? What are your thoughts?
They was playing dirty against us too. It was going back and forth. Oh, yeah, my kids had to eat my Stafford bobblehead on the platter.
Well, I know there are some Stafford fans that are still kind of irked at him because of the whole nonsense with him and Kelly, but that's a different topic we've already talked about.
Yeah.
But, all right. Jay, I'm pretty sure you've been listening in on this conversation, so what are your thoughts on this whole nonsense of the Lions playing dirty? Jay, I don't think we can hear you, bud. Still can't hear you. I think there's something going on with his mic because it shows that he's not muted, but when he comes back, if he comes back, we'll tune him in, obviously. But all right, here. Let's move into our next topic here really quickly, which, okay, this will be a fun one. So, Coach, we'll go with you first, and then we'll move our way up. So here's the question. Jared Goff has now done something that no Lions QB has done in 30-plus years and has a chance to do something that no Lions QB has done since the days of Bobby Lane, which is win 2 playoff games in the same season. Yep. Does he deserve not only an extension but a large, long-term extension, in your opinion? What do you think?
Yeah, he definitely played himself into a long-term extension. Was he 29? So I could actually see us signing Goff for 4 or 5 years.
That's what I keep saying.
Because he definitely earned it, man. I mean, at this point, if you look, and me and you had this conversation all the time. If you look around the NFL, I just stand in NFC. Jared Goff, you would probably say Jared Goff's name probably between 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you wouldn't go lower than 5.
No, and I agree with that. Like, if you're talking about the best quarterbacks in Detroit Lions history, for me, this is the list. At least it's for top 5. Bobby Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Probably then after that would be Jared Goff. After that would be Stafford. After that would probably be somewhere around the names of maybe Eric Kramer.
Scott Mitchell.
You could – I don't know if I'd put Scott Mitchell in there. I do know I'd put some guys like Gary Danielson in there.
Okay. Yeah,
well, Scott Mitchell did set a single-season record.
Yeah, Scotty, he was kind of accurate at throwing the ball.
For one season, he
was a badass.
Mitchell also, the only reason I don't like Mitchell now is because all of the freaking drama that's come out from the Bye Bye Barry
from the Bye Bye Barry, yeah.
Yep. But now that Jay is back, Jay, can we potentially see if you are able to hear us? No, he's talking with somebody else. But Jay, are you able to answer the question from earlier, or are you kind of busy? He's kind of busy.
His mic is muted.
Yeah, he's busy. So, Chemical, what are your thoughts on the original question of Goff, long-term extension, yada, yada, yada?
I say 5 years minimum, 10 years at the max.
Damn.
Damn.
10-year contract. Woo.
Look, I was saying this out of him when he first got here. I said that if golf improves, like I think he's going to, and this was when he first got here in the 313 in one season. I said he can do 5 to 10 years minimum. He can do 10 years max, and then retire as a Lion.
Well,
I'll say 5 years for sure. 5 years for sure.
Well, I'll say this. If Goff does get a 5-year extension, that extension will be on top of what he already has. So he has 1 year left on his contract, which will get him up to 30. When that 5-year kicks in, he'll be here until he's at least 35.
Right.
Which at that point, like, ooh, I mean, that's an interesting proposition. It really is, because I think most people are thinking more like a 4-year contract, not like a 5-year. Because if you give a player a 5-year deal, like you have pretty much locked them in for starterhood for a long time. Because I think a lot of people have kind of learned the lessons of giving long-term contracts and then deciding to get rid of said player. Such players like Brock Osweiler, Albert Haynesworth, soon to be Russell Wilson.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, well, the Browns are never going to admit the mistake on that one. But speaking of which, DC, what are your thoughts on this whole topic?
Absolutely. I mean, we are going to run into salary cap problems sooner before most of us realize or expect it, particularly with how many starters that Brad Holmes drafts all the time and how many Pro Bowlers we're putting out. But I still have confidence that JG will say, hey, if you give me 5 years, pay me out, and we'll do cuts and everything accordingly and kick it downhill. I don't think he's going to have an ironclad. I doubt that he'll just sit there and say, I want an ironclad, make me the top paid player in football, and go for that. But
I don't think that's going to be the case either, because Goff has never once struck me as a guy that's all about making money. Like, he is more interested about the players that he's playing with and the winning. Because think about it. Every time we've seen him in a conversation towards the media, every time we've heard when the post-game locker rooms, he's always talking about winning. He's talking about playing with the guys like a family. That's not something that strikes me as a guy that's greedy. So,
and as long as he's respected and honored, I mean, I'm sure he'll take most of the cuts, but we can do it. But yeah, I say put him 5 and longer.
All right. So here we go, Coach. This will be a fun conversation for you, coming from one coach to the person we're talking about here. So here's the topic. In Week 18, many Lions fans were upset that Campbell played his starters when many other teams decided to rest theirs. Yet in 2 playoff games, Cleveland versus Houston and LA versus Detroit, the teams that played their starters won over their challengers. Do you think that people now, should, I guess in some ways, do you think that was still the bad decision, or do you think that Campbell made the right one?
No, I'm a firm believer. I don't believe in the rest, because that's how you get rusty. You stalemated. You come in lackadaisical. So no, I agree with that, because again, I was a firm believer that we should have been, and we were going to get the number 2 seed after beating Minnesota. So I was still hopeful of that. But no, I don't believe in resting your players unless you get the number 1 seed and you have earned the bye week. Then you play football, man. That's what you get paid for. That's what you signed up for. And us as fans, that's what we want to see. We don't want to see Teddy Bridgewater against the Minnesota Vikings. We didn't want to see what's the third string running back, Craig Reynolds. We don't want to see him. So no, I agree with what Dan Campbell's doing. No, play football, man. That's what you're here for. Play football.
I'm sorry, Coach. I'm just reading this Twitter comment here because you guys remember. I'm sorry to segue from this, but this is something that's been kind of on my mind all week. Do you guys remember back when Dan Campbell first got hired? And this actually just came across the wire too. The Dallas Cowboys are going to keep Mike McCarthy. So here's what I was going to bring up here. You guys remember when Dan Campbell first got hired, right? And the whole kneecap biting came out. Do you guys remember a female Twitter account by the name of Jamel Hill?
We know Jamel Hill. She's from Detroit.
Yeah, I was about to say, do you remember what she said about Dan Campbell after he got hired?
I sure do.
Yeah, well, listen to this. She just made a comment 5 hours ago about the Patriots and Bob Kraft and Gerard Mayo. She said, I give Bob Kraft a lot of credit for making this hire because black coaches with Mayo's experience typically don't get these kinds of opportunities. I give Mayo credit for saying this because a lot of black coaches in his position wouldn't. What he said is not controversial. It's obvious. So it's like, wait a minute here. You're going to give credit to Bob Kraft. You're going to give credit to Mayo, but you're not going to rescind your comment from what you said 3 years ago about Dan Campbell?
No.
That to me is just a little bit hypocritical now, isn't it?
Very.
Very.
You making it about race, and it ain't even about that. Because if you look at the majority of his staff, he said that he wanted his staff to identify with the city, and 75% of the staff is black.
Yep.
I was about to say. So
we're not even talking about the players. We talking about the coordinators and
coaches. Yeah, coaches.
Oh,
yeah.
I know.
Way
I mean,
black coaches on the Detroit Lions than not.
I know, and that to me is just like I just find it funny when people want to start pulling in these social issues to the game, and it's like, listen, social issues have nothing to do with the game. The moment you start making it that way, now you're starting to degrade the game.
Yeah.
But
So Jamel
anyway,
Hill is Jamel Hill black?
She is. She is.
She got fired from ESPN.
I know. I'm just being a smart ass. I had to ask that. That was
She got fired from ESPN so many years back for making too many controversial remarks.
Yeah, she's a race
where have we
baiter.
heard that? Where have we heard that from before? I seem to recall Colin Cowherd had that happen to him once or twice.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why he now has his own show.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to you, Chemical, what are your thoughts on the whole thing of Dan Campbell not resting his starters, and then, Houston Texans also not resting theirs, but they also beat the Cleveland Browns like we beat the LA Rams. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a gladiator sport, man. Play your players. That's what you paid for. It's football.
All right, fair enough. What do you think, DC?
Absolutely. Player, and particularly on this team, ain't none of them going to want to sit or will sit. So absolutely.
Well, again, I literally said this earlier because I was like, you go back to the preseason last year, Dan Campbell wanted to keep Jared Goff sat the whole preseason. And Goff told him, he walked into his office and said, no, I'm starting the first game. It's like, do you honestly think that if Goff's going to do that for a preseason game, he's going to intentionally let his ass be sat when there's a chance they can get the number 2 seed on the line? Not a chance.
Nope.
So, Jay, are you possibly able to answer this question? Or are you still occupied? I'll take that as a yes.
Still occupied.
So, Coach, we'll move on to you now, and this will be the topic that we're going to have here. So, this actually just got updated here not that long ago. So, here we go. CD Deuce took a shot at Baker Mayfield and the Bucs by saying the Bucs would be a great group if they were to have a good quarterback. Where the update is now coming is that Baker saw that and then he shot back with a comment of his own towards CD Deuce. So, what are your thoughts on all this trash talking prior to the game?
To be honest with you, I am not a bulletin board material type of guy. My whole agenda is, man, practice, then play. Don't talk, but we have to accept CD Deuce for who he is, and he is the mouthpiece for the Detroit Lions. So if we say we're Lions fans, then we have to be able to accept what he does, because he did the same thing with Deebo Samuels. And we got to accept what comes with it, and we got to ride with him all at the same time. So, hell, if he say Baker Mayfield trash, then Baker Mayfield's trash, and we'll see come Sunday.
Well, I'm just going to say this, and you know what? I'll actually save this comment here for after you guys answer. But what do you think, Chemical? What are your whole thoughts on this trash talking war prior to the the game?
I'll say this much. Baker Mayfield's a starting quarterback, but he only looked great against the Matt Patricia defense.
I mean, you're not entirely wrong.
You know,
I mean, to be also fair to Baker, he had a decent year this year. It's not like he had a great year,
right?
But it's not like he had a bad year either. It was like, hey, considering all the crap that went on with him over the last year and a half with getting traded out of Cleveland to the Carolina Panthers, which were dysfunctional as hell, then getting traded from them to the freaking Rams. It's like,
Rams, right.
It's like he's gone through quite a lot the last couple of years. And I remember the start of this year, people said, oh, Baker looked terrible in training camp, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, for all the crap that was said about him, he actually had a decent year. And the fact that he led the Bucs to a division crown in the NFC South, even though that's not saying much, it's still a division title. It's like, listen, he did do something at least good. So it's not like he's a terrible quarterback. But if someone were to ask me where I would rank Baker Mayfield, I'd probably rank him right around mid tier. I'd say probably 16, 15.
He's the middle of the pack.
But that's just my opinion.
He'll be at that
I say
15
the same
20.
thing.
Yeah, 15 to 20.
I mean,
the middle of the pack.
Here's the way I look at it with Baker Mayfield. Will he win you games? Yes, but he'll lose you a lot more games than win you.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, DC, what are your whole thoughts on this?
Fucking brilliant. I love how he started just the mind games, and hopefully this will get CJ, because CJ GJ has been he hasn't been the same since he got back from injury. I mean, he's missed most of the season. He's going to take a couple steps to get back. Maybe this is CJ GJ getting back, but you know what I mean? I'll tell you one thing. There are way more quarterbacks who tried to follow Baker Mayfield's path and were out of the league almost instantaneously.
Yep.
So I will give Baker one thing. He has the heart and soul of a badass to actually pull up what he's been doing and still be consistent in doing this. So hats off to Baker. But, oh, my God, that is so well played by CJ. GJ just start getting in his head and start getting him pissed off and start getting himself rolling again.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. Here's what I'm going to say. I know because I actually talked with a Lions fan on Messenger prior to this whole thing, and this got actually brought up. I know for some Lions fan, their instant concern with this is Lomas Brown. And I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about with that regard, about how he said that they were going to beat up on a team prior to a playoff game, and it came back to bite the Lions in the ass terribly.
Oh, yeah, the past there.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So I know for some people, that's what this has almost got a feeling or a vibe to, is that whole nonsense. But the way I look at it is this. Number one, this is a team that we'd already beat previously in the regular season. Number two, we're getting almost 7 starters back from injury that we didn't have in that game.
Yep.
And number three, we're playing at home when we played them away and beat them. So it's like circumstances are a little bit different here.
Yes, sir. The most vital stadium in the NFL. That's what I was going to bring up. My bad for cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
I was watching some on the NFL Network, and the lady was saying that Baker Mayfield had called the Rams and asked him how loud was. They said, well, turn your radio all the way up during practice all week, and it still won't be as loud.
Well, that's one of the things. That's one of the things I've always known about Baker is that he does not do well in very loud, high-pressure environments.
No, he doesn't.
Because in Cleveland, it was an open-air stadium, so a lot of that noise is escaping into the open air. But in dome stadiums, it reverberates.
Mm-hmm.
And you're coming to Detroit, a city and a team that is extremely amped up, and you're going to be the enemy coming into the Lions' den, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, you're going to be getting screamed at 110 to 120 decibels the entire damn game.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it is also this, to get back to CD Deuce, it's like, listen, we knew who CD Deuce was when he came to the Lions. This is a guy that likes to trash talk. And it's like, listen, I don't have a problem with trash talking unless you have the ability to back it up. Case in point here, Michael Jordan. You name me one other guy in the NBA at the time he was playing that was a better trash talker that couldn't back it up on the court because Larry Bird, a phenomenal trash talker, but he could back it up on the court.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jordan. He would talk trash all the damn time, but he could back it up on the court. So it's like, listen, it's like, if you can talk trash, that's great. Just back it up on the field. And it's like, listen, we know what CeeDee Deuce can do. He led the NFL in interceptions last year. So it's like, listen, clearly he has the talent. So for me, I'm not necessarily worried about it so long as he can back it up on the field.
I got something I'll share with you.
So that's just my personal thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. I got one more thing. He's just trying to get in Baker Mayfield's head. That's all. That's
that might be part of it.
That's why I said it was brilliant. Hopefully he'll come away with 2 picks this game because damn, our D is not getting enough turnovers these past couple weeks.
He don't do well under pressure because when we played him in Tampa, he was pressured like majority of the game. That's why he threw them picks.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so let's move into their next topic here, which actually, since we just talked about Baker Mayfield, this actually to me is kind of a little bit of a comparative analysis in a sense. So here we go. Here you go, Coach Adam. Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield have had somewhat similar career paths. They were at one point the franchise golden quarterback. Then they were disrespected, traded, found new homes, rejuvenated their careers. So think about this one. 2 years ago, a lot of Lions fans wanted the Lions to trade for Baker Mayfield in Goff's first season to replace him. So my question to you is this. Which QB do you think performs better for their club on Sunday?
Jared Goff, because without Jared Goff, we probably 5-12.
Maybe
we're probably 5-12. I mean, if you go through our schedule and the games that going back to Saturday, this past game, if Jared Goff, look how clean Jared Goff played.
22 of 27, 82%, 277 yards, 1 touchdown, 121 passer rating, 75 QBR rating.
So you see what I'm saying? Now with Baker Mayfield, no, because Baker Mayfield has showed time and time again, like you said a few minutes ago, he can definitely lose you a game. And if this game becomes a shootout, like it did with the Rams, we should get 3 or 4 interceptions because Baker Mayfield is going to throw you the ball, as he did when we got to him that first game. If you can rattle Baker Mayfield and get to him, and I've been to Cleveland and watched him play. Yeah, Baker Mayfield, if he's hot, he's hot. If he's not, he's not. That's the thing with Baker Mayfield. There's no in between.
Well, let me just put this out here really quickly. I'll just put this out here just so that way you guys can understand this. We all know that the Lions and the Bucs are playing at 3:00, so that's technically an afternoon game. It's not an evening game, but it's also not an early slot game. That's an afternoon game.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know the fact that the last time the Lions and the Bucs matched up, Baker did not play very well.
No, he did not.
So keep this in perspective here. If you take a look at every single game that Baker has played this year against opposing teams, the worst game he had as far as passer rating, as far as completion percentage, you want to know what game that was?
Against us.
It was us.
Against us.
He had a 51.35 completion percentage rate with a 56.8 passer rating. His next worst game was against the Carolina Panthers. And we know how bad they were this year. Now, there's that one. But when you consider the fact of what I was saying about the Lions and the Bucs playing an afternoon game, think about this one. In afternoon games, this is what Baker Mayfield has done. He has a 2-2 record, 60.27 completion percentage rate, 4 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That's about a 79.6 passer rating. You want to take a wild guess what Jared Goff is in afternoon games?
Money.
He's 2-0, 68.8 completion percentage rate, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 113.9 passer rating. Just a complete vast difference between how those two operate.
I just saw some on TV because they got the Lions game back on the NFL, so I got it on TV. They said that Goff has the second most in the NFL as much quarterback.
I love this comment by Braylon Dennis. He says Jared Goff is better than Baker. Baker can't tie Goff's cleats on his best days.
That's funny.
I'm with
All right.
that. Nah, I'm with that all day.
All right,
He
DC.
could be our
what are
backup.
Yeah, I mean, he could back him up, but that'd be it. But I don't think Baker would take very kindly to being a backup. He didn't really do a very good job of it when he was in Carolina for a while. He was.
Well, funny you
The,
should say
NF
that.
the
Dave,
NFL
because
loves Baker Mayfield, though.
Oh, they love him because he makes headlines for him.
Yeah.
I was one of the guys who wanted Baker Mayfield to back up Jared Goff. He would be a perfect backup to Jared Goff. Hold the forward, do everything else, let Goff play. Worst comes to worst, take a kneel down here and there. He has the intelligence, he has the wit, or he has the grit for it. I would love to have Baker Mayfield to back up Jared Goff.
I bet you Baker Mayfield would improve. I bet you he would.
Well, tough shit. He's not going to be able to play in the league forever. I mean, eventually no one's going to sign him. But yes,
Well, he'll get paid. Baker Mayfield definitely finna get paid. He's finna get paid after this season. Somebody's gonna pay him.
He's gonna get paid. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
The reason why I believe he's going to get paid is because, well, think about it. The Bucs, since they're in the playoffs, they're going to be at least in the 19 to the 32 range. They're not going to be high enough to draft a quarterback.
Right.
Because all the good quarterbacks will be gone by then. So unless they're willing to trade up, which they could, because the Bears are definitely going to probably trade out of number one. Because I don't see why they wouldn't, because you can get more draft capital that way. And Caleb Williams already said he will not play for the Bears. So it's like, unless they're willing to take that and just say, screw it, I don't think they'd be smart to pass that opportunity. But
well, that's all fine and good. But the point is that Baker Mayfield's got to be a great backup someday. I'd prefer to be a backup for us. But he can't stand on the same toes in the same field as Jared Goff when it comes to gunslinging and winning. But as a backup quarterback, hell yeah, I would take Baker Mayfield. But he ain't nothing to Jared Goff. Absolutely nothing.
Fair enough. All right, let's move off of this topic here and let's move on to the next one. So here it is. We'll start with you, Chemical. So here's the topic. Dan Campbell said specifically that he had a ton of receipts in regards to people that have made comments about him and his team in the past. Who and or what do you think he is specifically referring to?
I'm thinking sports journalist, ESPN, NFL Network, Fox Sports, you name it. I think he got receipts on every last one.
Well, I mean, for crying out loud, we just talked about one lady he's probably got receipts on.
Jamel Hill, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, come on now. It's like if you're going to – the first thing the man does is make a press conference and you're going to make his hire about race. I mean, I think that's probably going to cause a problem with him.
But I think her dad probably got on her about that because her dad. She said her dad's been a lifelong Lions fan, and I'm pretty sure that comment didn't sit well with him.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. What do you think, Adam? What do you think your thoughts are on this whole thing with Dan Campbell having tons of receipts?
Oh, to all the naysayers who made fun, who thought he was a bonehead, a meathead, all the analysts, journalists, who had all negative comments to say when he was hired, they thought he was a joke, basically. And the tables have 3 years later, the tables have turned. So now look at us now.
Well, the way I look at it is this: like, how many times on ESPN did we hear people say, "Oh yeah, this just looks like a circus act. This just looks like, hey, you know what? He's just been brought in here to, just energize the fan base, but he's not a true football coach. He's not actually going to do the Lions any good." And it's like, wait a minute here. 3-13-1 to 9-8 to now 12-5.
Yep.
So
and now, if I believe, is he as a head coach? He got a 500 record now as a head coach after starting 3-13.
I would have to check, but I believe you're probably right.
At least including the playoff.
He should be there with the playoff win.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll check it out right now. But DC, what are your thoughts on what Dan Campbell is specifically referring to, or who he is specifically referring to, when he says he has a ton of receipts?
I think he's sitting there and talking about in general, like how we're now getting how we're now just saying like everyone just thought he was a joke. He's like, what is this guy? This is just a big dumbass from Texas who played on an 0-16 team, and all of the negativity he got. I guarantee you, I would be shocked if Dan Campbell knew or remembered any analyst who said any analyst's name, when they said it, or how they said it, because he's a real man and he has better shit to do than listen to the fucking sports media. I don't think he gives a shit. He's just like, yeah, I've heard all of it. I don't care. We're going to win football games.
So to answer your guys' question, with the playoff win, Dan Campbell is one game short of being 500. Because right now, with his regular season record, he's 24, 26, and 1. The playoff win brings it up to 25. So he needs one more win to be at 500 with the Lions. And obviously with Miami, he was 5-7 as their interim head coach.
And Dean DeGreer got it right. The receipts are all in the trash can because he doesn't give a shit. He knows the sentiment, but he doesn't give a shit. He's not sitting there like a Karen sitting there and being like, oh, I got this. I need to speak to our manager because I got this bill 3 years ago. Yeah, no, fuck that. He knows what they were saying, and he's just running them all over.
Yes, sir.
Well, I kind of think that Dan Campbell is in slightly the same way that, Jared Goff is, because I remember there was an interview that was done earlier this year, and the interviewers asked Jared Goff about whether or not he would issue an apology to the Saints fans from that championship game where there was no pass interference call. And he's like, hell no, I wouldn't. He's like, they had their opportunities to win just like we did. I'm not going to issue them an apology. It's kind of like the same thing. It's like you want an apology? Screw you. I ain't giving you one.
What the fuck man needs an apology?
I don't know. People these days are kind of ridiculous.
Chemical, you need apology. You need anyone to apologize for you or anything? Fuck no, I don't. I'm just like piss off.
I'm unapologetically me.
What are you gonna do? Make me feel better? No, I don't need to feel better. I'm fine. Just piss off.
I'm unapologetically me. I would never apologize for telling the truth.
Neither will I. It's like, you don't like the truth? That's fine. That's your opinion. Doesn't change the fact it's the truth all the same.
If you don't want to hear it from me, don't present it to me. If you don't want to hear the truth, don't ask me a question, because I'm gonna tell you honestly.
Money, that's one thing. In that case, I don't need apologies. But other than that, it's just dressing of emo icing candy. We don't need fucking apologies.
I want to read this because this statement just came from Jerry Jones in regards to Mike McCarthy. He says, this is Jerry Jones talking about Mike McCarthy. He says, I believe this team is very close and capable of achieving our ultimate goals, and the best step forward is for us will be with Mike McCarthy as our head coach.
Okay.
You believe you're very close, eh? The Green Bay Packers, the youngest team in the NFL, just spanked your ass on national television, but you believe you're very close. If your definition of very close is the blast radius of a hand grenade, then maybe.
Hey, hold on a second. I thought about something. Look,
blast radius of a napalm canister.
Hey, look. Lord. Had not the refs interfered in that game against Dallas, we would have whipped them at least by 2 scores.
Well, again, the way I look at it is very simple. People can say, oh, yeah, this, that. Hey, you know what? That's all water under the bridge for me now, because it's like, listen, by the Packers beating Dallas, we got a second home playoff game. We have a clear path to potentially getting to a Super Bowl if we can play our cards right. So it's like, listen, yeah, you know what, Jerry, you got your game in Dallas for when Jimmy got inducted into the Ring of Honor. Congratulations. Yep. But you know what? Who had the last laugh in the end? The Lions motherfucking did.
But that was the blessing in disguise that Dan Campbell was talking about.
Exactly. That's your silver lining right there.
Yep.
I mean, hell, I'm more pissed about people saying that we got a gift in the Vikings game with that first down part when no one realizes that it's on an angle, so you can't get a specific dot on the yellow line. They're like, oh, the Lions beat the Vikings due to a makeup call on a first down play. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid? Well, yeah, they are, but
They sound terrible.
All right, here we got 2 more topics before we're done tonight, so let's get to it. So here's the second to last topic. Coach, we'll start with you first. Many analysts and fans have spoken about the players and Campbell for the success the team is having, but this doesn't happen with also the likes of Brad Holmes' team building skills and Sheila making the decision to hire both Campbell and also Brad Holmes. So, what has impressed you the most about the Detroit Lions organization this year? What do you think?
Okay, first off, I would have to apologize to Brad Holmes because I gave him a lot of flack by being cheap and not going out and getting Chase Young and all these big name defensive players. So I would have to start there. The most impressive thing is how good Brad Holmes is at scouting. Because for him to be able to scout or put together a scouting team to continuously hit in the draft is probably the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Because for 10 years with Mullen and Bob Quinn, we couldn't buy a draft pick. So to see
Mark
Brad
Mayhew.
Holmes, him, and then I can't think of the guy that played linebacker for the 49ers, but became our GM, and we just kept getting receiver after receiver after receiver. Matt Millen, there you go.
Millen, yeah.
So
son of a bitch.
So yeah, man, to see these guys going to the draft and continuously hit, not just on first round picks, but I'm talking about third, fourth, fifth round picks. That's the most impressive thing to me for me.
Yes, sir.
Good point. Good point. What do you think, Chemical? What are your thoughts?
Okay, I think that they made a turn for the better. I got a little something I'm gonna read to y'all from this guy named Cormega that used to rap with the Nas and everything. He said this about Brad Holmes. This is something that I didn't know. It said in 2003 he was working for Enterprise Rental Car Company. He started in the NFL as an intern for the Rams. Now he's the GM for the Lions. This sends 2 strong messages. One, you can work and pursue your dreams at the same time, and it's not where you start, it's where you finish. When you build from the foundation, it starts from the bottom. Salute to Brad Holmes. I never knew that he worked for. I didn't know that was his career. Oh, I got another thing for you too about him. His uncle played with Barry Sanders. He was a lineman. His name is Sam Bradley. That's his uncle. I know his cousin because I cut his hair.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, DC. What are your thoughts, really quickly, before I give my own? What do you think?
On this entire roster and on most of Brad Holmes' teams, there isn't a wimp. There isn't a lazy player. There isn't someone who's not a work hog. And the only closest thing we had to an attitude adjustment, they sat him on the bench and then cut him. That's why we're kicking ass. It's not only the quality, it's the character and work ethic of all the players that Brad Holmes and Campbell and Spielman and the rest of them put in. That's why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. And I hear everything you guys say, and they're all excellent, excellent points. And for me, here's what I'm going to say. There's a bunch of this that definitely needs to be said about this organization. Number one, it all starts at the top for me, and that starts with Sheila, because you have to understand something here. Sheila did something that neither her mother nor her father did, in the sense that her father pretty much just completely left all the decision-making process to the Lions organization. He had literally the only thing that he did was pretty much just say, hey, I own the team. He wasn't really a part of the meetings. He wasn't really a part of the game strategies. He wasn't really a part of any of that. He was just like, listen, I'm going to hire people and I'm going to let them do their job. Same thing with Martha, because Martha, again, she didn't really know much about football. She inherited the team after her husband died. Sheila still stays out of the way in the sense that she lets people do their jobs. But the thing that really impresses me about Sheila is that she actually integrates herself with the entire process and is like, okay, what are you guys thinking? What's going on here? I want to know what's going on here, because I'm not just the owner that's collecting and signing checks. I also want to know, hey, what's your process with how we're drafting? What's our process with team building? How are we doing our practices? How can we improve our ability to play? So for me, Sheila showed something that was completely different from any Ford owner that we'd had in the past, in that she fully integrated herself into the job because she was competitive and that she wanted to win. So that's number one. But then number two, You take a look at what Brad Holmes has done is that Brad Holmes took a completely different perspective to drafting that we've seen out of all GMs in the past. And I was literally listening to this because I was outside shoveling snow in vain, by the way, but still. And I was listening to the Inside the Den episode after we had done the drafting that took like 4 months to get.
Oh, yeah.
And Brad said something that completely just like reverberated in me. And he was like, listen, other teams, they draft positions. We draft players. It's like, listen, we're not interested in necessarily if you can play just a certain player. We want the best player. We want guys that are of high quality work ethic. We want guys that come to work with their lunch pail, that are going to not give any ass, or anything else. We want players. We want the best players. And it's like, listen, when you build a team of players like that, you're going to have a high-quality team that's going to win. And then when you have a high-quality coach like Dan Campbell, who knows how to get the most out of his players by being a great leader, and then you surround that core nucleus of young talent with good veteran leadership, you're going to have a damn good football team. So what the Lions did, in my opinion, is Sheila saw what had happened in the past and said, no, we are not going back to that bullshit. We are going to completely rework everything from inside out.
Right.
So for me, I think that, like I said, it all starts with Sheila and then it disseminates its way on down.
Ownership on down.
Because it's like, listen, what did Sheila do? Sheila said, listen, I want to listen to people who know what they're talking about with football. I want to listen to Spielman. I want to listen to Barry Sanders. I want to get their input on who I need to find as a head coach, who I need to find as a GM. I want to get the best people in here so that way we can do this job right. And that's exactly what she did. And in 3 short years, we have seen the turnaround come to full fruition almost. So that's just my personal opinion.
Yes, sir. I totally agree with you.
Yep.
You know what? It's something else that about her that you might not know. I seen it a few years ago. I think I seen it in 2021, going into 2022. She had got hired in as either vice president or president of football operations in the NFL.
Well, I do know that because I actually have talked about this on my old channel, DLF, because Sheila is a completely different, well, how do I put this? Because the last time I said this kind of upset some people, which I don't know why it did, but it did. Right. Sheila is not your typical millionaire.
No, she's not.
Because when she was growing up, she told her father, William, she said her only desire was to work in the NFL. That was her entire desire, was to work in the NFL. And that since her father, William, was good friends with the NFL commissioner at the time, which was Cozell, she went to him and she said that the commissioner he couldn't think of a possible job for her in the NFL. So then she went to being a housewife. And then she was like, listen, she was raising her family. She was being a soccer mom and being a soccer coach for little girls. And I'm just like, wait a minute here, time out here. I have a hard time imagining a Ford family member that is part of one of the largest car companies in the entire world being a soccer mom driving a minivan.
Me neither.
And it's like, then you take a look at how she was brought up when she went to college. Yeah, she went to a prestigious college, but she went to a college that had not allowed men in it. She was the first female class that went through that prestigious college. If I recall correctly, it was Yale. She was the first class that went through, and she was part of the tennis team, and she won honors at tennis while she was at college. So it's like she completely was a trailblazer in the sense that she completely redefined what it was like to be a woman in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then she takes over being the owner of the Lions, and she completely redefines what it means to be a Ford owner of the Lions.
That's right. You know what? She also, she said, I heard her say this before in an interview with the Detroit Lions page, where she was saying that she used to go to the games with her dad.
Yep, at Tiger Stadium.
She said that she used to ask questions to the coaches and the staff, and she would be immersed in it. She learned a lot about football, so she knew it was more about football than actually her parents did.
Well, that was the thing. She used to go to games with her parents, particularly her father, when the Lions used to still play at Tiger Stadium.
Right.
And he actually went to training camp session practices when they were still in Bloomfield Hills.
Right.
So it's like her entire life has been the Lions.
Yeah.
So for her, it wasn't like when her father bought the Lions as a business decision or when her mother got the Lions because her husband passed away. She's wanted to be the owner of the Lions. She's wanted to work for the Lions ever since she was a little girl.
Right.
So again, it's that I would say desire, that hunger that she's had to want to be associated with the team more so than just in name only. But all right, here. Let's move into our final topic of the night. And it looks like Jay is finally off work. So how's it going, Jay? I think he's still having cell phone issues.
Can you guys see this picture pretty clear?
Not really. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can blow up your. Here we go. Oh, I see that. Yeah, I can see.
That's Sheila Hemp right there. That's her sister, Billy Sims and Martha. Do you know that Martha thought I was a football player? I was there in VIP with them at a Taste the Lions event, and we were talking and everything. She said that she's like, how you doing, young man? And this is before I got gray around the beard. She's like, how you doing, young man? So I'm doing fine. She said, how you liking the team so far? So I said, shoot, I've been a team my whole entire life. She said, oh, yeah, that's great to hear. She's like, well, I haven't met all the free agents and the rookies yet. I said, hold on a second. I said, wait a minute. I said, you think I'm a football player? She said, you're not a football player. I said, no. And then she felt my arm. She said, you kind of big. I said, yeah, I used to play football. I said, I still can. You can suit me up and put me on. That's why they put that.
He almost got himself a free agent contract.
Man,
Yeah,
what? I would have said, yep, free agent. What time you need me to be there?
I was like, hey, you know what? I don't even have to be a player. I'll be a training staff member.
I told her, I said, I can still take a hit and catch a ball. So I was a wide receiver and I was an outside linebacker.
Yeah.
Strong safety.
I've actually got something to show you guys here, too. This is actually pretty impressive here. So take a look at this. I'm going to do the same thing I just did here. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, I see it.
That's a no.
Bless you. Oh, yeah.
Jared Goff, the first QB in NFL history to, I can't read that, for multiple. Oh.
To snap
What
a
is the blue
10-year plus playoff win drought for multiple teams.
Ooh-wee, that's record-breaking.
Because he snapped the Rams playoff drought from 2005 and 2019. So that was a 14-year drought.
Right.
And then he snapped the Lions' 32-year win drought.
Man.
And
So-
fuck with JG.
Jared Goff has, again, this is why I keep telling people Jared Goff is a great quarterback because, one, he rebrought the Cal program to life after Aaron Rodgers left. He rebrought back the Rams team after freaking Kurt Warner left. And he rebrought back the Lions team. And out of all three of those, the Lions is probably the most impressive one.
Yes, sir.
So it's like, you can say what you want about Jared Goff, but it's like, the man fucking gets results. But all right, here's the last topic of the night. So here we go. Chemical, here we go.
Yes, sir.
The Lions will play the Bucs Sunday at 3 p.m. What do you think is the biggest key to the Lions getting a second straight playoff victory over the Bucs? What are your thoughts?
Play their game, play aggressive, play Lions football.
Simple, straightforward, and I love it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Coach Adam? What are your thoughts? What do you think is the biggest key for the Lions in this game against the Bucs? What do you think is the biggest key to victory? Coach, I don't think your mic's working.
Yeah, it went down.
I think your mic's having problems because I can see it's not muted, but it's not coming up. Yeah, I still can't hear you, Coach. I'm sorry. We'll circle back to you, and hopefully you'll have your thing fixed. DC, what do you think, really quickly?
Well, what Chemical said, and also find the next gear. We need to start running teams over and dominating.
All right.
I mean, we can squeak by, but find another gear, adjust the defense, take their two receivers out. Do not let another 100-yard receiver go on. And find another gear. We have it. Just find another gear. Or the next gear.
All right, fair enough. Here's what I'm going to say. And I said this earlier in my episode earlier today, but for me, the biggest key to victory is red zone efficiency. The Lions defense has to be extremely, extremely efficient in the red zone by making sure the Bucs do not score in the red zone, which shouldn't be that hard considering the fact that the Bucs have one of the worst red zone offenses in the NFL. But likewise, the Bucs have one of the best red zone defenses, which means the Lions have got to, above all else, they have got to score when they get in their red zone because they're going to need to maximize every single trip to get points. So that to me is the biggest key to victory, red zone efficiency. What do you think, Coach, now that I see it, you're back? Let's see if your mic works officially. Nope. I don't know what's going on. It was working the whole time. Don't you just love how technology doesn't work when you need it to work at the right moment?
Man, it's
Exactly. All you need is earpods that never need to be charged, and that will be the greatest invention ever.
Unfortunately, no battery is ever going to be that good.
was just more like a solar, maybe a solar one that you can stick in the sun for a nice little while and it lasts all day, maybe something.
Or nuclear charged. But, you know, I don't know how safe that would be, but it wouldn't die.
No, it wouldn't. Absolutely.
You know, a lot of the technology we get, and I'm pretty sure David knows this, the military has it light years ahead of the public before we get it.
Oh, yeah. Of course. The military always gets the front runner technology compared to everything else. Everything else.
I can't hear nobody now.
Okay, Coach. Now I can hear you. I could hear him, and he left. All right. So at this point, I'm wondering if I'll give Coach one more chance to come in and try and fix it, and so that way he can give his answer. And then if not, we'll probably just call it a night. But I'll just say this about the game itself. I think that the Lions should be able to handle business. I think that they'll win. I wouldn't say a blowout, but I think they'll win a decisive victory, probably by 7-10 points, something like that.
Two scores, maybe.
Maybe. And I think that the Lions are really going to set themselves up perfectly for, getting into that conference championship, because it's like, listen, when you got two playoff wins on your schedule already, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Okay, Coach, let's try this for a third time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Gotcha.
sir. You're great.
Thank you, man. I don't know what's going on. To piggyback on what Chemical said, we got to play clean defensively. Do not give up any cheap touchdowns. We do that, then we'll win easily.
That'd be true. All right, folks. But with that, we have officially done our post game from last Sunday, and we've kind of had a pregame to this episode. So what we're going to do here is we're going to call this episode to a finish. I will then do the live stream for the game at 3:00. Any or all of you guys are welcome to join me for that stream if you guys want to. But until that time at 3:00 on Sunday, I'm going to talk to you guys all later in my pre-recorded videos. But until then, have everybody a great week, and we'll see each other again on Sunday.
Yes, sir.
All right, fellas.
Go Lions.
Good night.
Yep.
Let's
God
go
bless.